So Algebra 1, we're in 9.4. We skipped 9.3. I've never done that section. 9.4 is the last new section for a little while. In upcoming days, we'll have a book homework from this. There will be then a review sheet coming. There will be a quiz coming. So this will be the last video for a little bit of new material. So what we're talking about today is slope. So I'm working from two papers, the 9.4 notes, and also finishing the other handout. If we were still live and in person, this would have been a vocabulary quiz that we would have eventually done. But at least for now, it organizes all your facts in one good location. So today we're talking about slope. And so number 15 on this paper says, what does slope measure? And the answer is steepness. S-T-E-E-P-N-E-S-S, steepness. There's three formulas for slope, and they're written on the other paper, and they're behind me on the board. So one of them is y1 minus y2 on top of x1 minus x2. These little numbers at the bottom are called subscripts. They're in the opposite position of exponents, but they don't mean anything like exponents do. What these are just doing is differentiating between two different y's and two different x's. Like if I walked over to this problem, this is an x, and this is an x, but those are different numbers. This is a y, and this is a y, but those are different numbers. So I could call this x number 1, and this x number 2, and I could call this y number 1 and y number 2. That's what these are about. Another symbol that's good to know is the Greek letter delta, which is a triangle. That just means change in. So instead of writing a subtracting problem, you can just write this triangle symbol that's read delta y over delta x. It means the change in y over the change in x. And anytime you want to figure out how much something changed, you're just subtracting. Sometimes books will explain this as rise over run. The rise is how much something changes this way, which is y stuff. The run is how much it changes this way, which is x-related stuff. So some books like that formula. You can also do the subtracting completely backward, but on the quiz and on the notes I wrote, I just took these three. But if we changed and did the subtractings both out of order, that actually wouldn't harm anything. If I went back over to this problem and decided to call these point number 1 and these point number 2, doesn't really mean anything to us. Another thing that's worth mentioning while we're on the topic of slope, any line that goes like this, uphill, as you read it from left to right, just like you read the English language, if it's rising, that has a positive slope. If you ever have a line that's falling like this, from left to right, that has a negative slope. If something is completely horizontal, flat, that has a slope of 0. And if we go vertical, it does not have a slope. It can't have a slope. It's so steep, you just can't even deal with it. Okay? A line like this would have about a slope of 1. And if I go steeper, maybe its slope is now like 2 or 3. The steeper I go, the higher the number gets. Maybe this has a slope of 10 because that's pretty steep. Now if I go back to my 1-ish slope and I go less steep, maybe that's a slope of a half. Or less steep now again, maybe that's like a 1/4. Maybe the less steep you go, the lower the number goes toward 0. The more steep it goes, the higher the number gets toward like infinity. When we go to do this homework, we just need to obey one of these formulas. I think this is probably the best one to think about for a beginner. So I'm going to look to subtract the y's. These are the y's. I need to do that on top. If you're in the mood to do 1 minus 2, that's fine. If you'd rather switch the order up and do 2 minus 1, that's fine. Pick an order, any order, it really doesn't matter for the first choice, but then we have to be consistent with what we pick. The y's are always going to go and subtract on the top in whatever order you choose. The x's will have to go on the bottom. So if you did 1 minus 2, you're stuck then doing these minus those. And we need to now use the 2 and the 4 in the same order. 2 minus 4. If you do 1 minus 2, you have to do 2 minus 4. If you went 2 minus 1, switch the order on the other one to that and have 4 minus 2. You probably like the looks of that one better, so if you do that, that's fine. 2 minus 1 is 1, 4 minus 2 is 2. If we had gone this route, we'd have had a negative 1 on a negative 2. And a negative dividing a negative is going to anyway be positive. No matter what you do, all roads will lead you to that answer. If I go to do this, I have to always look first to the y's. The y's feed to the top. So I have to subtract these, whatever order I choose. I feel like doing this minus that, because I like the idea of minus minus making plus, I think. So this minus that. Then for the bottom, I'd have to follow the same order. This minus that. On top, 1 minus minus 2, that's going to be a 3 on the old minus minus makes plus. The bottom is negative 5, and we get out of there. If this were improper, we'd leave it alone. But if it could reduce, we would reduce it. So if this had been like 3/6, we would need to get down to a half. If this had been 3/2, no one cares. That's fine, it's 3/2. It also doesn't matter if you ever look in the back of the book and you have this answer and the back has that answer and your friend has this answer. Those are all the same answer. If you have a negative on the bottom, it's the same as if you had the negative instead on the top, or it's the same if you have the negative just out in the front. It doesn't matter where you put that negative as long as there's one of them. It would only be different if you had 2 of them, because the 2 negatives would have to make a positive. If we go to do this, we want to subtract the y's to feed the top. 2 minus 2 would get me 0 on the top. If I subtract the x's to feed the bottom, we'd have something in the 5 family, either 0 minus 5 or 5 minus 0. 0 on top of anything is 0. That would be a horizontal line. I talked at the beginning of the lesson about horizontal lines have a slope of 0. You don't need graph paper today, but it's a quick graph. 0, 2 would be up 2. 5, 2 would be over 5 up 2. Connecting the dots on dots like this would get me a horizontal line. Anything horizontal has a 0 slope. For this, we would look to do the y's first, subtract them in whatever order you want. Probably 6 minus 4 to get a positive 2 is what most people would prefer. If I'm going to do this minus that, I have to do this minus that. Negative 3 minus negative 3. Well, minus minus makes plus. 0 on the bottom. That is never allowed. That has no answer. If I did a quick sketch of these points, it would be vertically stacked. Anything that goes vertical has no slope. That ability we just did here should pretty well carry you through a lot of the homework. We still have a couple side topics here, but the main event here will be 387. You should be good on the first 18 just doing this. The first 18, they want you to find the slopes, and then on a couple of them, they'll ask you, once you found the slopes, to decide if it was horizontal, which meant 0 slope, or vertical, which was the no slope impossible one. Then from 19 to 22, there is actually a little bit of graphing. I said no graphing, that was a fib. There is a little bit of graphing. 19 to 22 is a little bit of graphing. They'll want you to graph a line that goes through a certain point and has a certain slope. So we're first going to graph the point they give you. So if they say 1, 3, we go right 1, because the first number is always right or left. Up 3, because the second number is up or down, with up and right being positive and the other way is going negative. Then if we use the slope second, that'll make us a second dot. The top number will always take you up. The bottom number will always take you right. Because if we think about our slope formulas, the tops are the y's. Y's go up. The bottoms are the x's. X's go right. So with a 1/2, I need to go up 1 and right 2 not from the origin anymore, but from where I last left off. I was sitting on this point, and with a slope of a half, from there, up 1 and right 2 to make our second dot, to play connect the dots. So another one of those, again, do the point first. 3, 4 would head me over 3 and up 4. Then I'm going to use this slope. If you get a negative slope, this one will go down the 1, but we are always going to go right. No matter what, lines go from left to right. You read lines like you read English from left to right. So the bottom will always go invariably right. The top is the variable. Up if it's positive, down if it's negative. So this is telling me go down the 1, right the 3. So I'm sitting here last, go down 1, right 3. Any line with a positive slope should be going uphill. Any line with a negative slope should be going downhill. That'll take homework to 22. Then the last group, they're asking you to practice slope to do a different sort of choice. They're asking you to decide if points are collinear. Collinear just means they're in a line. If you have a bunch of points in a line, all of the slopes among all of the points would all be the same. So what they're looking for you to do is just practice your slopes here. So if I did these 2 points to do a slope, I would need to first start off subtracting the y's. I'd rather go 1 minus negative 1. Little minus minus makes plus action. If I'm going to do this minus that, then I'm going to have to go negative 2 first minus negative 4. That makes a plus, that makes a plus, this is 2, this is 2, grand total is 1, then you're going to have to do another slope. I did A with B. I can now either do A with C or B with C. It doesn't matter, I just need to make another choice to do another slope. If I do these 2, I'm looking now at 5s and 1s. I'd rather do 5 minus 1. If I do 5 minus 1, I'm going to go 2 minus negative 2. 5 minus 1 is 4. Minus minus makes plus is 4. 4 over 4 is 1. This was 1. Everything's 1. I'm going to say yes because of the agreement between the 2 things that I just did. Do another go round. I'm guessing this one's probably a no. So I usually give you 1 yes and 1 no for these groups. Pick any 2 points out of A, B, and C to do slopes. I'm going to do A with B because it's the first 2 that I see. Always start with y's. I'd rather do 7 minus 4. Then if I do 7 to start, I do 0 to start because they're from the same group. 0 minus negative 3. So top is 3, bottom is 3. Again, that's 1. Then I just need to pick another combo. If I pick those 2, with 11s and 7s, the y's, the second ones, are always on top. I'd rather go 11 minus 7. The bottom is then 3 minus 0. That's 4 over 3. 4 over 3 is not the same as 1. Anything that's different from anything else, you just say no. So what you're looking to do on 23 to 30 is 2 slopes and then say yes or no. Do not one day give me a paper that just says yes or no. That's crazy. Give me a paper that has a little bit of work for the fractions to show me whether the slopes were the same or different, and say a yes or no. It took me some work to do that. It's going to take you some work to do that. Don't act like you just say yes or no and that you guessed it right. That's crazy talk. So show me the 2 slopes on the paper someday when you're turning in your 387. The next few days, 387, 1 to 30 would be the assignment like for class next time. There's no new lesson that day. It's just a matter of using that day to get caught up on homework. If you're having trouble, send me an email and we'll get caught up that way somehow, Zoom or whatever. There's a sheet in the packet that would be due 2 days out, and eventually we'll get to be taking a quiz soon. See ya.